Yeah, so I mean, definitely, definitely a little bit of marketing, but far more the, I mean, a lot of these things overlap, but far more of the sales side of, whether it's an auto shop, because in the beginning it was anybody and everybody that I could talk to. And so like I worked with an auto repair shop, and to them, the principle was they needed more cars to come in the door. And how were they going to do that? Well, they needed to get themselves out there into the marketplace. They needed to create a greater level of awareness of who they were. But then they needed to create a compelling offer, which is something that all of these decades later, Alex Hormozy has so wonderfully talked about in his book, $100 Million Offers. And it's like they had to create a compelling offer, right? They had to create a reason why. And then once they had a reason and they started to gain attention or awareness, then I had to teach them how to ask for that business, because most, especially most small businesses, most entrepreneurs, they don't start a business knowing business. They don't start a business knowing sales. They start a business because they're passionate about their craft. And so, it was them. I was working with a small mortgage broker, and it was the same thing. Like he knew mortgage, he knew finance, but he didn't know how to attract clients, and he didn't know how to convince them to buy from him. I mean, he didn't understand how to differentiate himself in such a way that people would choose him over somebody else. So again, early on, it was helping them to understand those basic fundamentals of what it means to win new opportunities. And then once that got good, then I started to dive deeper into, and this took years, but into more of the psychological aspect of why people aren't picking up the phone, why people aren't reaching out to prospective clients, which was just a whole nother animal in itself. Yeah, well, yeah. So, in an organization, HR is where all the chips fall, right? When people are having a bad day, if they're going to go to anybody inside the company, they're going to go to HR. When people are out for extended periods of time because of a sickness, HR knows about it. When people are struggling with mental health issues, they typically are going to go to HR and talk about it. And a lot of times, organizations are trying to provide certain tools and resources to their employees to keep them happier and healthier and supported. And so, because I do a lot of work just in the business community, a lot of the companies, their HR teams have just taken an interest in this story because it's just real, and it's something that they're hearing in some way, shape, or form inside their own organization.
That's great. So that's maybe where a lot of the group work that you're talking about comes into play when you work with these organizations.
Yeah, yeah. What we do typically in those environments is I'll come in and I'll host a workshop on one specific area. So it's maybe identifying and challenging negative thoughts, or overcoming self-limiting beliefs, or understanding what our purpose is in the work that we do. So we'll host a workshop, and then from that workshop, we will typically facilitate more intentional group coaching, group discussion, sometimes one-to-one coaching with certain members of their team, sometimes the whole team, but individually. And so it really becomes a launching pad, opening the door to the conversation, and then allowing those employees to open up in a more personal way as the needs arise.
All right, great. Well, welcome. Today, joining me for another episode of Define Your Purpose is Ryan Miller. And Ryan is in Yorba Linda, California. He's a faith fueled performance coach, author, and speaker. And it says you help high performers achieve unparalleled success by transforming their mindset, behavior, and business strategy. So maybe you could tell us how you came up with that title and tagline and all, and what's going on with your business there?
Yeah, so let's see here. I made it all up. No, um, I've been in business for this will be my 13th year coaching, training, teaching, and so as I have been on this journey over the last 13 years, um, what I continued to find was that individuals typically seek further tools, strategies, and processes to improve, particularly as it relates to sales and revenue generation, which is why a lot of people hire me to begin with. And while that's true that they lack in those areas and so therefore need them, the one key component that a lot of people are missing is the mindset, the habits, the disciplines, and the behavior that are required to execute. And so while I offer them a lot of strategies, tools, and resources, we're always integrating that into their behavior, their thoughts, their actions to ensure that they're executing on the things that they're trying to achieve. And so that's where kind of that tagline came into play, was just really helping to meld those things together.
Awesome. I mean, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, I guess, for a lot of people, huh? It's to rather they're taking action every day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have access to enough information on the internet today, and now with AI, that we don't need any more information. We've got all of it and more. What we need is action, and so that's what I'm really trying to help people uh, uh, to achieve more than anything.
Awesome, awesome. What got you into coaching? I mean, what got you started?
So I spent the first 15 years of my career in sales. Worked in a couple of different industries, and in the tail end of that 15-year period, I found myself working for a large publicly traded organization, and I was one of their top sales guys. I was leading one of their sales teams. But on the back end of the 2008 recession, our company, just like many of that season of life, got really beat up. Our stock price took a massive hit. We were laying people off left and right. And there finally came a day when my boss called me in and he laid me off. And that was in April of 2011. And that wasn't for a lack of performance. That was because I was making a lot of money and they needed that money to survive at that time. And so I found myself without a job. And after interviewing with quite a few different organizations here in Southern California, I finally just came to the realization that I didn't want to work for anybody else anymore. That the values that I held to personally, the desires that I had to serve clients in a certain way, I just didn't feel like I could do that for other people. And then that was coupled with the fact that I had started having a deep passion to want to teach, to want to lead and help other people. And so I called my wife after walking out of an interview in which I got a great offer with a lot of money, and I called her and I said, I don't think I can take the job. I think it's time that we start our own business. And as my wife has so amazingly done for all 23 years of our marriage, she said, if you believe that you can do it, then I trust you. Let's get after it. And so that was really was the first dive in. Was just I was forced into making a decision and felt like that was as good of a time as any.
Right, right. What a great moment for you and your wife it must have been, though, to take responsibility for your results like that.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely challenging at that time. So we'd been married quite a few years. We had two daughters. We had a mortgage, and my wife was staying home with our kids. So we didn't have a second income. We had not done a good job of financial management, and so we had, in addition to our mortgage, a decent amount of debt. We had no savings. We had no 401k. We had nothing, and we had $500 in our checking account the day that I decided to start that job. And so while it was extremely scary, I had a benefit and a blessing, and that was I had to succeed to survive. Like if I did not make that business work from day one, we weren't going to eat and we were going to be out on the streets. And so thankfully, little by little, I was able to claw my way forward.
Right. Wow. Jeez. Here I was thinking you had money saved up at that point and you were ready to make the move. And
No, that absolutely wasn't the case.
so you what did you really focus on at that point? I mean, you mentioned the desire to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, because I had spent 15 years in sales, I had been fairly successful myself. My primary focus was helping small businesses and entrepreneurs to sell, helping to teach them the basic skills of sales, the simplicity of just a basic sales process and how to follow that. And so that's what I did. I mean, I was literally calling on every connection I had locally and asking them if they needed help selling. I got into a local networking group pretty quickly, and I was asking them for introductions to other people for the same thing. And so little by little, it was just getting in there, being given the opportunity, demonstrating results to people. And then as I did that, which I mean, it took over a year for the business to really get off the ground. But as I did that, I started to gain some more demand because I had more positive social proof as to what I was doing. And so then I was able to charge more. I was able to win more clients. And so little by little, that kind of grew.
Nice, awesome. So you were just helping clients with their marketing in general. It was any kind of business client, or did you start to niche down more?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, definitely a little bit of marketing, but far more that I mean, a lot of these things overlap, but far more of the sales side of, whether it's an auto shop, because in the beginning it was anybody and everybody that I could talk to, and so like I worked with an auto repair shop, and to them, the principle was they needed more cars to come in the door. And how were they going to do that? Well, they needed to get themselves out there into the marketplace. They needed to create a greater level of awareness of who they were. But then they needed to create a compelling offer, which is something that all these decades later, Alex Hormozy has so wonderfully talked about in his book, $100 Million Offers. And it's like they had to create a compelling offer, right? They had to create a reason why. And then once they had a reason and they started to gain attention or awareness, then I had to teach them how to ask for that business because most, especially most small businesses, most entrepreneurs, they don't start a business knowing business. They don't start a business knowing sales. They start a business because they're passionate about their craft. And so, it was them. I was working with a small mortgage broker and it was the same thing. Like he knew mortgage, he knew finance, but he didn't know how to attract clients and he didn't know how to convince them to buy from him. I mean, he didn't understand how to differentiate himself in such a way that people would choose him over somebody else. So, again, early on, it was helping them to understand those basic fundamentals of what it means to win new opportunities. And then once that got good, then I started to dive deeper into, and this took years, but into more of the psychological aspect of why people aren't picking up the phone, why people aren't reaching out to prospective clients, which was just a whole nother animal in itself.
Yeah, right. Wow, great. So, were you also helping with people's marketing services, or was it mostly their messaging and their how to?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot more and still today. I do a lot more strategy and then helping them to execute. So a lot of done with you type of work. We try to stay away from as much of the done for you type of work as possible. Um, One of the reasons why that's the case is even today, I think people spend far too much time on stuff that they don't need and will never use in order to be successful. Like if you started a business today, literally today was your first day in business, you don't, other than, you really don't even need a business license. Like you could just open a bank account and you could, for any service, you could go out and find customers for free. You just gotta pick up the phone. or you just have to go out into your local area and knock on doors. That doesn't cost you anything. You don't need a business card, even though it's helpful. You don't need a website, though it's helpful. And so all of these done for you, or all of these services, again, they're extremely beneficial when we're talking about email marketing and social media and video and content creation, which I have people that do all of that stuff for us now because it's definitely beneficial. But most people start a business and believe that they need those things in order to be successful. And my argument is you need none of that. It may sound nice, but you don't need it. And so I really try to help people, even all these decades now, more than a decade later, I try to help people get to the root cause of why they're not winning new opportunities, why they're not achieving the goals that they have for themselves, understanding what those are, and then helping them to overcome them.
Great. Wow. Awesome. So maybe why they're uncomfortable asking for money for their services when they're just getting started, or the amount of money, or I think people have a lot of hang-ups around money as well. Do you run into that a lot in your, I mean, is that must be part of what you help people with?
Yeah, that's hard. It is hard to ask people for money in exchange for a product or service. Um, but I think that it starts even earlier on than that. I think that, you know, um, we live in a society today that talks a lot about being okay with failure and accepting the fact that rejection is present. But I still think that most of us hate it. And I understand why, because it really sucks to be rejected and it sucks to fail. But that fear of failure paralyzes people from being successful. Again, if you started a business day one, if somebody called me and said, "Hey, I started a business yesterday, and I need your advice. I don't have any money. I need to go win new business." And once we got through the basic qualifiers of how badly do you need to be successful, I would tell them, "What's the lowest hanging fruit? Pick up the phone and call everybody you know, and tell them what you're doing." And the biggest barrier to that is probably going to be they're afraid because they're afraid to be rejected. And if I said, okay, let's not do that then. How about if you just go out into your local community and knock on every single door? If you're a roofer, knock on every house and see who's got a leak. If you are a plumber, knock on every house and see who's got a backed up toilet, right? Like it doesn't matter what it is. There's a market out there for it. But the problem is the thought of people going door to door is oftentimes scary, and so people fear that. Um, Other times too, I think this is another kind of mental barrier that a lot of people face is people feel like they're too good for certain things. That it's below them to go knock on doors. It's below them to cold call, and so we would rather do these more creative, magnificent things. And again, they're all super beneficial, but um, most people are not going to make a living generating business off of social media, whereas most people will make a living generating business face to face. And so those are some of the things that, whether it was 14 years ago or 13 years ago when I started, or today, those are a lot of the things that I try and help people with. And then once, by the way, because I don't want to bash all that stuff, once you gain the fundamentals of how to communicate your value prop, or how to attract a client to you, how to communicate your value proposition, how to convince them to buy from you, then you can take that to email marketing, to social media, to video, and then you can be incredible at it because you've already proven the model in its most basic form.
Yeah. 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 Totally. I've read this exact same thing from other marketers. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. So what are you excited about coming up this year, that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I wrote a book towards the end of last year. We published towards the end of last year in September. The book is called Wounds: How Hurt, Heartache, and Tragedy Become the Keys to Unlocking Greatness. And it's a memoir, 9 very pivotal moments in my life, just a lot of hurt, a lot of struggle. And so through that, we've gained some pretty cool opportunities to go out and speak to host some workshops. And kind of what has been most surprising to me, I intended it to be a way just to build stronger relationships with the marketplace. So for people to gain a better understanding of who I was, where I've come from, some of the things that I've gone through. Um, what I didn't expect was the mental health community has taken a very strong liking to the book because it talks so much about kind of unintentionally my mental health journey and what I endured, some of the tactics that I built up along the way, how I was able to overcome some of the things that I do, but at the same time being raw and vulnerable enough to say that I still struggle with them. And so we've been gaining a lot more opportunity to get in front of HR professionals so they can bring it back to their teams to help people start proactively combating a lot of the struggles that people are facing, whether it's burnout, anxiety, depression, their own self limiting beliefs that are causing them to not be able to be productive in the workplace. So I'm just excited that I'm getting out there and telling that story. I love speaking from the stage. I've been able to do that now for about 20 years in different capacities. And so I really love that I get to do that. I love that I get to share that story and I get to help other people share theirs.
Cool. Congratulations on the book. It's really awesome. I mean, you mentioned HR professionals in particular. Why do you mention that as being part of your integrated with your book? Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, in an organization, HR is where all the chips fall, right? When people are having a bad day, if they're going to go to anybody inside the company, they're going to go to HR. When people are out for extended periods of time because of a sickness, um, HR knows about it. When people are struggling with mental health issues, they typically are going to go to HR and talk about it. And a lot of times, organizations are trying to provide certain tools and resources to their employees to keep them happier and healthier and supported. And so, because I do a lot of work just in the business community, those a lot of the companies, their HR teams have just taken an interest in this story because it's just real and it's something that they're hearing in some way, shape, or form inside their own organization.
That's great. So that's maybe where a lot of the group work that you're talking about comes into play when you work with these organizations.
Yeah, yeah. What we do typically in those environments is I'll come in and I'll host a workshop on one specific area. So it's maybe identifying and challenging negative thoughts, or overcoming self-limiting beliefs, or understanding what our purpose is in the work that we do. So we'll host a workshop, and then from that workshop, we will typically facilitate more intentional group coaching, group discussion, sometimes one-to-one coaching with certain members of their team, sometimes the whole team, but individually. And so it really becomes a launching pad, opening the door to the conversation and then allowing those employees to open up in a more personal way as the needs arise.
Nice, awesome. So, would you say that's where a lot of your clientele, or most of your clientele, comes from? Is the corporate world these days, or you still reach out into um, the solo entrepreneurs?
So I don't do a lot of direct B2C work, but I do still do a lot of work with individual founders, entrepreneurs, because they're on an island. I mean, it's everybody glorifies entrepreneurship, that it's the greatest thing ever because you have all this freedom and yada yada yada, which isn't really all that true. But um, they find themselves in positions where they just feel so lonely and are they're struggling so deeply. And on one hand, it's like they've got to keep growing their business. So that's actually where we typically engage, is they're trying to find ways to grow. And so we talk about the sales. But what we end up finding a lot of times is there's deeper struggles that they have, and they just need somebody to support them on their journey, to walk with them through the process, to help hold them accountable to the goals that they have. So that's where a lot of times I do work with the individual contributor or like the micro business. And then we're starting to do a little bit more corporate work, but still there's a lot more bulk of my work that's done in the kind of entrepreneur, founder, solo business owners area. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I find lots of times companies these days will have budgets for coaching, and it can just be a matter of um, proving an ROI, which is lots of times not that difficult, I guess. Right? Are you are you doing that these days?
Yeah, so it's interesting. That's actually the first time that I ever had a coach, was because one was forced on me in a company that I worked for. And it was a great gift. Up to that point in my life, I was pretty successful. I didn't think I needed any help from the outside. And yet, an organization that I worked for brought a coach in and offered that coach to anybody that wanted to work with him. And I'm like, whatever, I'll take him up on it. And it was the most incredible blessing to be able to work with him, to learn so much, to see blind spots that obviously I couldn't see myself. And so, from that, I learned, as I have applied that same thing to my own practice, that there is an incredible need out there. And a lot of times, individuals don't have the awareness for or the means to provide that for themselves. And so what we'll typically do is we'll offer that to an organization, but we do want to make sure that there are key metrics that we're measuring to ensure that that organization is benefiting. And so typically, when it's a salesperson that I'm coaching, it's really easy because it's if we're working together, he's either generating or she's either generating more money or they're not. And so that's easy. When it comes to coaching on kind of the mental health side of things, it's a little bit more challenging to have a direct correlation between where they were and where they're going to go. But one of the things that we try to look at and we help the organization to measure is productivity. Because when I am frustrated, when I'm depressed, when I'm down, when I'm dealing with problems in my marriage at home, I inevitably bring that to the office and I'm just not as productive. And so little by little, both because that employee feels good that the company is investing into their well-being and because that employee is growing in the challenges that they have had, they're getting better, they're becoming more productive. And so we're typically able to measure growth that way and how that's directly benefiting the organization. Yeah.
So, what have been some of the big lessons maybe that stick out to you, or maybe a recent victory that you've had a lot of success with that just is really stuck in your head that ends up coming up over and over again, maybe, or
Yeah, I think the successes are easy to share, so I'll stay away from those and I'll share the challenges because I think that this is where um, a lot more people are living right now. I think a lot more people live with the challenges, they live with the frustrations of where they're at. So I think the first challenge I learned or lesson that I learned is you need a clear vision and you need to stick to it. Um, I um, I had an idea when I started my business what I wanted it to look like, but I really didn't have a clear vision for the future. And it took me a long time to completely understand that. And when I work with other individuals, entrepreneurs and founders, that's one of the greatest struggles is they don't know where they're going. So Stephen Covey, who is very well known for his book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, one of his seven habits is begin with the end in mind. And his whole idea is if you don't know what the end looks like, how do you even know how to take the first step? And I think too often we're blindly taking a first step. And before long, we end up at a destination that wasn't the destination that we intended it to be and don't like it because it wasn't our vision to begin with. So that's one. I think two, even as an individual contributor and as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I think team is critical. And so, because you don't have employees, you have to surround yourself with other people that are going to contribute to the better of your life and your business. Um, Early on, I made a huge mistake, and that was I was proud to be the smartest person in the room. And it took me a decade before I realized what a huge mistake that was. And so I've now, probably over the last 5 or so years, I've spent more time trying to find people smarter than me to be around than ever before. And so I feel like that can become such an important part of a team aspect because they're lifting you up. They're calling you out. They're, again, helping you with blind spots. They're really pushing you to be better. And then the last one, just kind of like a big one, would be um, the battle to succeed is never over, ever. There is never a day that I have found in my own career or that I have found. I've had the fortune to work with multi-million dollar earners, and it never gets easier. The challenges just get different. And so I think that if you are striving for success, whatever that, however you define that, whether that's monetary, status, relational, whatever, I feel like we need to go in understanding that we always have to be able to, we always need to fight for it. Too often we get to a place where we start to get too comfortable and we watch our success decay. We watch all that hard work waste away. And so I think we just need to be prepared for the long haul, which goes back to the last one I just said, which was if we've got a great team around us, they're going to help us to sustain those challenges when we face them over and over again. And as we grow and as we get better, that team gets bigger, that team gets stronger. So it enables us to endure further. So those are three big things that I've been challenged with, I've learned from, and I think I'm still learning from.
Great. Yeah, yeah. I I heard if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Absolutely the truth. Well, and somebody else says this. I don't know what the number is, but you're the product of so many number of people that are around you, the five people that are around you, or whatever. But it's like if you think about that in that same regard that you just explained right there, like what a mistake it is to be surrounded by five people that aren't as smart as I am, or that aren't as successful as I am. Because if I'm the product of them, they're going to drag me back down. And that's not belittling anybody else. I want to be around people that are going to lift me up. I want to be the product of excellence. I want to be the product of, like, for me personally, my values, like I want to be the product of an excellent husband and a wonderful father and a positive contributor to society. Like these are all things that I want to be elevated towards. So I need to surround myself with people that model those things.
Yeah, yeah. I think that people like to imagine there's this place that they'll arrive. Like one day I'll be successful and I'll have all the stuff, or one day I'll reach my retirement and everything will be great and I'll have all my ducks in a row. And to your third point, I think there's never that one day when everything's perfect and you're in the clear and everything's great. And if you're waiting for that, you're going to be really disappointed.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like you definitely get to those moments, those seasons of life where we've broken through and it feels incredible and we should celebrate those. But yeah, I mean, it's never over. And it shouldn't be. I mean, part of the reason why we get into this, hopefully, is because we love it. And if you're not doing what you love, people say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't believe that. I believe it's going to be hard work. But I believe that if we love what we do, we'll get to love what we do every single day of our life and we won't want to stop doing it.
Well, I mean, if people want to get in touch with you and maybe get some one-on-one help or talk with you some more, is the best place is your maybe your website?
Yeah, definitely you can go to our main website is my name, ryanjamesmiller.com. The book and the programs that we have created for the book, those are at woundsbook.com. And then I'm on YouTube under Ryan James Miller. Play around on Instagram and LinkedIn as well, and you can find all those on my website. But yeah, I love the opportunity to be able to connect and learn and grow from other people, and to be able to share as much knowledge as I can with them too. And if there comes an opportunity to be able to help them in some practical means, I'm always up for it.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, we'll have to catch up again soon. I'd love to have another podcast with you, or I mean, I might be having some events coming up. Keep an eye out. Maybe we'll have you as a speaker or something like that.
More than happy to contribute in any way I can.
Great, great, awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today, Ryan. Um, I want to wish you best of luck with the book. Um, be sure to pick that up. And is there anything else you want to leave with?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Carl. It was great to be able to chat with you.